In a recent video, I demonstrated the similarities and differences between the Dolby Atmos workflow and the MPEG-H workflow in Nuendo 13. And in that video, I also said that MPEG-H might actually be an excellent starting point for anybody who wants to get into 3D audio, especially object-based 3D audio, because it works in Reaper and all the tools that you need are available for free. And this is exactly what we're going to do today. So today, how to get started with MPEG-H in Reaper. Let's get started. In this video, I'm going to focus on how to get started with MPEG-H in Reaper. If you want to know more about what MPEG-H actually is and how it compares to Dolby Atmos, I recommend that you watch my previous video about how to use MPEG-H in Nuendo. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. I'm going to use pretty much the same project in this video as I used in the previous video. The samples that I'm going to use are from a sample developer called Duende Sounds, which I like quite a lot. This is not a sponsored video, however, I just like these samples. And finally, I'm on a Mac today, but everything that I'm going to show you works on Windows in exactly the same way. I'm just using a Mac for convenience purposes because that's the easier way for me to record everything. And with that being said, let's hop into Reaper and let's check out our project. Now, our project contains 4 loops, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 of those loops and going to route them into the bed of the MPEG-H setup. And then I have 2 additional loops that I'm going to use as stereo objects. But let's first have a listen what we have here. So essentially we have a drum loop here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to position that in front of me and I'm going to make that part of the bed just as an example on how to use the bed. Then we have a drone. And this drone I'm going to position behind me, sort of something that looms in the background. Also part of the bed. And then we have 2 vocal tracks. One is what I call the call. So let's just let that loop around. And I'm going to position that on the left side as an object, as a stereo object. And then we have a response, and I'm going to position the response on the right side of the room, also as a stereo object. And that will complete our MPEG-H setup. So let's turn that into an MPEG-H project. Now the first thing I need to do is I need to create a bus or a track that holds the MPEG-H authoring plugin. And I could use the master bus for that purpose, however I found it to be a little bit more organized if I use a separate bus, and that's what we're going to do here. So let's add an additional track, and this new track we're going to call that the MPEG-H bus. Now this bus needs to be a 16-channel track because we are going to use level 3 MPEG-H that has a maximum amount of 16 channels, and we will see later why this is really important. So the next thing we need to do is we need to turn that into 16-channel track, and then we are going to put an instance of the MPEG-H authoring plugin on that track. So let's I've already searched it here, so let's use the MPEG-H authoring plugin, and I'm going to add that here. I then need to select the reference layout, and for reasons that will become apparent a little bit later, I'm going to select a 5.1.4 reference layout. So let's scroll down here and let's choose 5.1.4. You can always change that later, but you know, kind of if you already know that we're going to use 5.1.4, why not kind of change that or set that right away? And that essentially kind of is now my main plugin where I'm going to do all the magic in terms of how to turn our project into MPEG-H. Now, in order to get things started, there are a couple of things that I need to do, and I need to add the objects and I need to add the bed tracks. And in MPEG-H, in contrast to Dolby Atmos, everything is done in this authoring plugin. And this is done through these buttons here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bed track, and this is going to be a channel-based component, and this channel-based component, let's call that the bed, and we are going to use a 5.1.4 bed for that purpose. And the reason I'm going to use 5.1.4 is, first of all, Where are we? 5.24, here we are. First of all, because I only have 16 channels available, I need to be a little bit conservative with the number of channels that I'm using for my bed, because I also want to have a couple of channels available for my objects. And I also want to have something that is really fully immersive. So I want to have something that has more than 2 overhead speakers. So 5.1.4 seems to be a good choice here. And then I'm going to add 2 objects because I'm going to use the 2 call and response tracks, so these 2 tracks, as 2 stereo objects. So let's add 2 objects here. Now the objects that we're going to use, or the components that we're going to use, are components with 2 objects each. Those are stereo tracks. So I'm going to change the object count to 2, and let's call that the call. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the response. So let's have the same thing with the response. And this is also going to be a 2-object component. And now I have everything set up. I'm going to worry about the routing a little bit later, because we need to route all our tracks into our authoring plugin. This is something that we are going to set up later. Before we can do that, there's one additional thing I want to point out, and that is that I also have this additional option here, which is what's called a switch group. And the idea of a switch group is that it gives the listener the ability to switch between different tracks. This is something that you would do, for example, if you're using language tracks. So if you have a movie, for example, and you have different languages, then you could do that through a switch group. And the switch group then gives the listener the ability to switch between different tracks. Now, in our particular case, we are not going to do that. We don't really need a switch group here. I just wanted to mention it because that's actually one of the interesting things about MPEG-H, this additional possibility to have some sort of interaction between the listener and the audio that you're creating. So now if I'm looking at the authoring plugin, I see that I have an error here. And whenever you have that, you can simply click on that and it will tell you what the error is. And the error currently says that the scene contains no presets. And the reason for that is because the way MPEG-H works, or the MPEG-H authoring plugin works, is we need to define presets. And these presets define different selections of components or objects. And we can have different presets for different situations and create different kind of configurations that way, but we need to have at least one. So let's add a preset, and we're going to use that preset. Let's call it simply test. Doesn't really make a lot of difference. We can give it a kind, so we can kind of categorize it, but that's not really necessary here. And what we're going to do is we're going to simply add all of our components to this preset. And as soon as I've done that, you see that essentially no further issues have been found and everything is set up correctly. The final thing is I need to make sure that the monitoring is set correctly. And in the monitoring section, what I have, the rendering layout currently set to be stereo. If you have a setup where you have a multi-speaker layout, then you can switch it over and you can kind of select whatever is appropriate for you. But in this video, I'm going to use stereo. I could use binaural. A lot of people always want me to use binaural, because most people are not really listening to my videos on headphones, I usually choose stereo instead. But kind of if you want to use binaural, you certainly can do that. So the next thing I need to do is I need to prepare the routing, and that essentially means that I need to select which channels belong to which of the components in my authoring plugin, and I can do that by simply going here into the input routing section. I can do that by kind of clicking on any of those components, really going to use the response here, and if I click on that, I see the routing, and the way this is currently set up is, and this is really the order in which I created those components, that the first 10 channels that come into that plugin are routed into the bed. This is the channel-based component. The next 2 are routed into the object that is called call, and the final 2 are routed into the object that is called response. So what we need to do now is we need to route our tracks into those individual input channels in order to kind of route them within the authoring plugin into the individual components of the MPEG-H setup. Now in Reaper, this is very easy to do. So let's start with the 2 objects. With the call object, and what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click on the routing button here, and I'm going to add a new send, and the send is going to be sent into the MPEG-H bus. And what I want to do is I want to send the audio, the channels 1 and 2, so left and right, to 11 and 12. Those were the 2 channels that were essentially kind of assigned to this stereo object. And then I'm also going to disable the master send because I only want to send it into the MPEG-H authoring plugin. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the second object pair. So once again, we're going to add a new send. We're going to send that into the MPEG-H bus. We're going to send left and right channel into channels. In this particular case, 11, 12 was the first object pair, 13, 14 is the second object pair. And once again, we want to disable the master send. And then for the final two channels, or for the final two tracks, those are supposed to become a 10 channel and a 5.1.4 bed. There are really two options that I have. I could either create a separate bus and route them into the bus and then send the bus into the MPEG-H plugin, or I can simply send them individually, and this is exactly what I'm going to do here, so without any additional bus. So the first thing I need to do is I need to turn those into 10 channel tracks. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to change that into 10 channels in order to prepare for the 5.1.4 configuration. I'm going to add a new send. I'm going to send that into the MPEG-H bus, and I'm going to send all 10 channels from 1 to 10 into channels 1 through 10 in the MPEG-H bus, so that it essentially arrives at the bed in the authoring plugin. And then I'm also going to disable the master send, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the second one. And so also I'm going to, well, first of all, I need to change that to 10 channels. Here we are. Then I need to add a new send into the MPEG-H bus. I'm going to send all 10 channels. And I'm going to also send them into channels 1 through 10 in the MPEG-H authoring plugin. And once again, I'm also going to disable the master send. Now, at this point, I should already hear something. Currently, I don't really have any panning going on. So the two tracks that are going into the bed are currently located at left and right channel, and the 4 objects that come from the call and the response are all kind of put together into one point right in front of me. So they essentially come through the center channel, but still we should be able to hear something. So let's just play the audio. And I see sort of the signal from the bed coming in, the call. So the final thing I need to do in this setup is now also create a little bit of excitement by moving these things around. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially change the position of the tracks that go into the bed. And the easiest way to do that is by adding the resurround panner. And so let me just resurround pan. And so I'm going to add that to one track. I'm going to want to pan that not into a 7.1.2, but I'm actually going to pan that into a 5.1.4 setup. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pan the left speaker, or the left channel into the left speaker, the right channel into the right speaker. So that's essentially what I'm going to do for the drums. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the drone. And for the drone, once again, I'm going to add a resurround pan plugin. I'm going to change that to 4.1.5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to locate them kind of next to me, left and right. And then I'm probably going to also change the height a little. So let's just move that up a bit so that we have a little bit of height information here. And let's do that just a little bit, and that's that. So I now have the two tracks that go into the bed pan. So once again, if I play the audio now, I essentially see that there is information coming in on all 10 channels. Well, not exactly on all 10 channels. The LFE is currently not receiving any information, but that is perfectly fine. And the final thing I need to do is I need to pan the two object tracks, the two object pairs, and this is done. Objects are panned within the MPEG-H authoring plugin. So let's open up the MPEG-H authoring plugin and let's go to the call component. And in the call component here, if I click on this little arrow here, I can open up the panner. And what I want to do is, that is the call. So let's put that on the right side. So I'm going to kind of put that maybe the left channel here on the right side directly and the right channel here more in this direction. And then, well, actually that's the response. Sorry for that. That's the response. So let's move that. So let's move that in this direction. I want to be consistent with what I did in the last video. And then for the call, essentially, we are going to put that on the right side. Okay, we are. That's a little fiddly, but kind of you get it. You get it to work. By the way, you can automate that if you go into. And let me just close that again. If you go into the object automation routing setting, you can select which of the parameters are going to influence elevation and azimuth. So you can essentially kind of define what the parameters are that you need to automate in order to automate the individual objects. And you can simply do that in Reaper and kind of create automation lanes, and that will move objects around. And if you don't want to use azimuth 1, but a different one, you can actually select it here. But you generally don't need to change that. You can simply leave it the way it is. And with that, as I now should receive everything in exactly the way I want to receive it. So let's just play the audio again, and I should now have the call on the left side and the response on the right side. So let's see if that's actually what's happening here. And I might switch over to binaural. So let's have that loop. So in this particular case, the binaural was actually a lot better because I had the essentially the objects positioned directly next to me, and in the stereo version that didn't really sound good. And that works perfectly fine. And you can now kind of play around with that. You can automate these things and play around with 3D audio. Now, one of the limitations, and I also mentioned that in my video about Nuendo 13, is that because we are limited to MPEG-H level 3, we only have 16 channels available, and with this particular setup, we already used up 14 channels. So we used up 10 channels for the bed, and then we had 2 stereo objects, which were 4, which is 14. And then the MPEG-H authoring plugin needs the 16th channel in order to communicate metadata. So technically, we only have 1 channel left. So we could add 1 additional mono object, but then that's pretty much it. So with layer 3, we are pretty restricted. But nevertheless, you're kind of in order to get your feet wet and kind of get started and play around with it, this is actually fairly nice. So the final thing we now need to do is we need to export our MPEG-H creation, and this is done in a 2-step process. We first need to prepare everything in the MPEG-H authoring plugin, and then we need to initiate the export through Reaper. So let's go into our MPEG-H authoring plugin, and let's click on the export button here. And if you do that, you first of all need to select what exactly you want to export. There are a couple of different options. Now the first thing is what's called an MPEG-H production format. This is sort of the standard way to export MPEG-H, but you can also export it as a BWF ADM file. This is similar to Adobe Atmos master file. Just be aware that it's not the same, so you cannot interchange them. So the MPEG-H BWF ADM file and the Adobe Atmos BWF ADM file are 2 different things. They cannot be interchangeable. They are not interchangeable. And then we also have an option, for example, to export a channel mix. But in our case, what we're going to do is we're simply going to export an MPEG-H production format file. So we need to select where we are going to export that. I'm going to drop that onto the desktop, and let's call that maybe task MPEG-H. And let's click save. And then we need to initiate the export by clicking on the start button. Now, if I do that, it will come up with an error, and the error is simply because I have not yet selected an in and an out point. For this to actually work, I need to tell the MPEG-H authoring plugin where the audio actually starts and where it ends. Now, in our particular case, the start of the content is 0. That is perfectly fine. We need to just kind of set the end of the content. And for that, I'm going to put the cursor here at the end of my loop. And I'm going to simply click on this Y button here. And that will essentially take the 36 seconds that it kind of has there and select that. And then I'm going to push start. And now it just waits for Reaper to do the export. So I now need to go into Reaper again, and I need to click on render. And in the render, select I need to first of all select the test file, but the one thing that's really important here is I need to set the sample rate to 48 kilohertz because MPEG-H requires everything to be in 48 kilohertz. If I don't do that, it will actually kind of throw an error. So let's put that to 48 kilohertz. And then let me just kind of move that so that we see what's happening here. I'm simply going to say render one file. And as soon as I do that, it will render that, and the MPEG-H authoring plugin came back with a success message, and the file is now exported. Okay, so now I need to check if everything actually exported correctly, and the easiest way to do that is simply by using the MPEG-H production format player that you can get for free from the Fraunhofer website. I've opened it up here, and all I really need to do is I need to drop my MPEG-H file that I've just created into the production player. That will open up the authoring plugin, and then I can simply play it and see if everything essentially exported correctly. Once again, I'm going to switch that over to binaural. And here you already see a little bit of the issue that essentially I have 16 channels. Channel number 16 shows the metadata. So there's actually action here, but this is not audio. So really what I have is I have one additional channel available for one additional mono object. And that is actually fairly limiting. But once again, in order to get your feedback, that is actually perfectly fine. And, kind of if you don't want to or don't need to use a bed with 10 channels, you can certainly have more objects by just reducing the complexity of the bed. So as you can see, this is really straightforward to do and a lot of fun actually. And in addition to just playing back the audio file, you can also use the tools from Fraunhofer in order to create MPEG-H video. They have a muxing tool where you can marry a video file with an MPEG-H audio file, and that way you can create fully immersive video. And that's really cool. And best of all, once again, completely for free. Now, this is really everything I wanted to say today. Thanks again for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please use the comment section below or join our Discord community. Invite link is in the description below as well. And with that being said, see you at the next video.